Hey everyone, it's Fentony. This is what you need to know about Amazon's The Lord of the Rings series. I've got dozens of videos on the channel, so check them out, but I'm going to break everything down in one video. This series was first announced way back in November 2017. It's going to be a huge budget, potentially the largest budget in TV history. Amazon spent $250 million just for the rights. They're on at least a 5-season commitment, and after them 5 seasons, it's likely they're going to spend over $1 billion. And that's not including the potential spin-offs. Even though it has been 2 years, Amazon are still pretty quiet. They've released a few map teasers throughout different time periods of Middle-earth. They've announced the showrunners and their team, the fact they're going to film in New Zealand, and they're also renewed for season 2. But apart from that, there's not much else. But I've got videos on all of this, and I will be continuing making videos, so make sure you subscribe and ring the bell to turn the notifications on. So this is probably the biggest question. When are the episodes going to drop? I think sometime in mid-2021 at the earliest, maybe 2022. We're already in 2020 and they haven't filmed anything yet that we know of. And usually shows like this with big CGI budgets take well over a year to turn around, from when the cameras roll until the episodes drop on the streaming provider. So my prediction is late 2021 or early 2022. We do know the series will be set in the Second Age of Middle-earth. Basically that's Sauron's first war and the forging of the Rings of Power. If you're not a massive Tolkien buff, basically Peter Jackson's The Fellowship of the Ring, that's the prologue. That's the Second Age of Middle-earth. Or a small part of it anyway. It's an older Middle-earth with different kingdoms and rulers. Don't expect to see Frodo and Bilbo Baggins. It's long before their time. It's even before Gandalf came to Middle-earth. We know it's the Second Age because they've clearly said on their teasers the Second Age, but also Numenor still exists. Numenor is an island west of Middle-earth. It's basically where Aragorn's ancestors came from. We also expect the forging of the Rings of Power to be a massive part of this series. Remember, Sauron disguised himself as Annatar, the Lord of Gifts. That was Sauron's fair form that he used to trick the great smith Celebrimbor and the other elven smiths of Eregion to create Rings of Power. 19 great rings were made for the races of Middle-earth, and many lesser rings. And of course the One Ring, forged by the Dark Lord Sauron in the fires of Mount Doom, with the purpose to dominate the other rings and control the races of Middle-earth. He put a large chunk of his life essence into that ring to enhance his own powers and to rule Middle-earth. But without that ring, he's incredibly vulnerable and he depends on its survival. As for the other great rings, 3 for the elves: Narya the Ring of Fire, Nenya the Ring of Water, and Vilya the Ring of Air, and they were solely forged by Celebrimbor. Sauron never touched these rings, but Celebrimbor used Sauron's teachings, so they're still bound to the One Ring. But unlike the other rings, they were created with the power to preserve instead of dominate. But if Sauron has the One Ring, then the elves can't use these rings. But after Sauron is defeated at the end of the Second Age and the One Ring is lost, the elves use these rings to bestow and preserve their realms. 7 for the dwarfs, but they proved too resistant to the magic of the rings. The rings could not control them, but it made them greedy and power hungry. And finally, 9 for men, who fell to the power of the rings and became the Nazgul. Of course this series is much more than just the Rings of Power, but it's a massive part of the Second Age. Basically I think it's the main plot point, with everything else built around them. The series is being called The Lord of the Rings on Amazon, but technically it's not the Lord of the Rings books. It's likely going to draw some material from the back of Return of the King. In the back of Return of the King there's these volumes called the appendices, which feature important details and dates and other stuff. Very important details are not really mentioned in the books, or details that are expanded on, that build the history of Middle-earth. A lot of the Second Age material does come from the appendices, but there is material actually in the story. For instance, Elrond and Gandalf have conversations in Rivendell where they talk about the Second Age. But technically it's not the Lord of the Rings. It's not going to be retelling the books or doing the movies again. But I understand why they're using the Lord of the Rings on Prime. Sauron is the Lord of the Rings. He's going to be a major character, and the Lord of the Rings is the name most people associate with Tolkien. It's his most well-known story. And it's not the biggest lie in the world to call this the Lord of the Rings. There's a lot of hype behind this series, but it seems to have a few issues behind the scenes. They've spent a lot of time in pre-production, and there's all this talk about this 2-year contract, and the fact they had to be in production before November 2019. That doesn't mean they have to be filming episodes. Potentially it could mean they just have to move into pre-production. But honestly, we can't say anything. We can't confirm it. We haven't seen the contract. And it's not like this series is going to get cancelled. Amazon have spent far too much money, and the Tolkien estate are making too much money out of it. We know they will film in New Zealand, and there were early reports they might film in Scotland, but it is finalised they're going to film in New Zealand and be based in Auckland. They're going to film the first 2 episodes and then take a 4 to 5 month break to figure out what to do with this footage, and then work on the season 2 scripts at the same time. So when they come back and finish season 1, they might actually be able to film season 2 at the same time, or do them back to back. I think Amazon feel season 1 has taken far too long, and they want season 2 out a year, maybe 2 years at the max after the first season. They don't want to film all of season 1, get it out, and then start season 2 by scratch. They want to have season 2 almost ready to go for the next year. Tom Shippey, the Tolkien scholar who's associated with the series, seems to be giving his advice, and his knowledge in Tolkien did say there's meant to be 20 episodes in season 1, but at the moment that's all talk. Nothing's confirmed by Amazon, and I think we should wait for that. JD Payne and Patrick Mackay are the showrunners, and honestly they've done pretty much nothing. They're kind of in the whole Dan and Dave Game of Thrones situation where they have barely any credits, but they've been given the biggest TV show in the world. That's pretty scary, but there must be a reason why they were selected. The director for the first 2 episodes will be J.A. Bayona, who directed Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Like I said, he's doing the first 2 episodes, but he might come back and do some more as well. And I think he's also a producer. They have a very experienced team, including Brian Cogman, who worked on Game of Thrones. But supposedly what the team's working on is very secret, and maybe that's why Amazon haven't revealed much. They want to keep it secret until everything's finalised and they're ready to show us stuff. As for Peter Jackson's involvement, there's a lot of contradicting reports. One report says no, he's definitely not involved. One report says he might be. Depends how he feels. But he has said on camera that he's not involved with the Amazon series. He's looking forward to watching it as a fan. But he also said Amazon might send him scripts and he'll see if he can help out. And I have said from the very beginning, I think this series is going to be set in his universe as a Peter Jackson prequel. It's going to be a prequel to his movies, but it's also going to stand on its own. It's not going to rely on them too much. But it's likely going to look and feel very similar. And that makes perfect sense. Just like with the name The Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson's adaptation is probably the most popular version of Tolkien, and it's the one the casual audience know the best. Nothing official on casting yet, but several actors have been linked with this series, including Markella Kavanagh, Will Poulter, Maxim Baldry, Joseph Molly, Emma Horvath, and Morif Clark. This is all came through Hollywood trades, so nothing by Amazon yet, no press releases on casting. And there's also been reports that some of these actors are going to be playing parts that are made up for the Amazon series. Non-Tolkien characters, but we also think they might just be code names. But Morif Clark's character is meant to be Galadriel, who's the only Tolkien character so far. And then there's another report saying Will Poulter's dropped out of the series. But like I said earlier, nothing's confirmed. There's not really much else that's known, and some people have a lot of concerns. Especially with the fact the Second Age doesn't have a lot of material, and it was never told as a story, like for instance The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, Return of the King, or The Hobbit. It's more of a history volume, important details and facts. Remember, the Second Age is set over 3,441 years, and we don't know how much of that the series will cover. There's lots of details in the appendices in the back of Return of the King, but also more details in Unfinished Tales, The Silmarillion, and many more. We don't know what books they can use. For instance, Peter Jackson only had the rights for The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings / Return of the King appendices. He couldn't touch stuff from other books. It's like in that scene in The Hobbit when Gandalf forgets the 2 blue wizards' names, because their names are mentioned in other books which Peter Jackson could not touch. But I do think the map of Numenor that they released actually comes from the book Unfinished Tales, and some people think they might have the rights to certain stuff on a case-by-case situation. For instance, they can't use every single detail, but if there's something they need they can use it with the Tolkien estate permission, and supposedly they're involved quite heavily, and they have veto powers. But honestly, there's no point in doing a Second Age series without the proper source material. As I said earlier, I think it's a Peter Jackson prequel, and another report said they're allowed to use all his material from his films, and that's why in the initial talks Warner Brothers were involved. Supposedly Amazon can add and expand details, but they can't contradict what Tolkien wrote and change history. Honestly, it's a bit of a mess, lots of contradicting reports, but once we get them casted and story details, I will be making videos, and of course when the episodes drop. If you want to get them, make sure you subscribe, ring the bell, turn the notifications on. But I want you guys to post in the comments below your thoughts on this new Lord of the Rings on Prime series. After 2 years, are you concerned? Honestly, I've been waiting to do Lord of the Rings videos on this channel for a long time now. Of course I've got some doubts, but let's just wait and see what happens. They've got a lot of competition, they've got Game of Thrones prequels, they've got The Witcher on Netflix, and so many more fantasy shows. They can't release something crap. And of course they've got to live up to the legacy of Peter Jackson's films. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. Click here to learn about Avatar: Last Airbender live action series on Netflix. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.